So instead white plays short castle, and he probably missed that black can play rook f8, queen takes f5, and now king g8, and now the rook of black is on the f file too, and the position eventually is almost equal. In fact, I would even say that black now is slightly better, because white has this bishop that's passive, he doesn't have any active play right away, and black doesn't have material weaknesses anymore. So queen g4, queen d7. I would prefer queen c8, because now if white were to take on c8, then the rook gets on the c file. In my opinion, queen d7 is a small mistake, because now white could consolidate. He takes, now the knight goes back. Instead of going to c4 potentially, now the knight is on d7, white plays knight d3, taking control over the squares e5 and c5, and potentially preparing the development of the bishop. a5, black is defending and at the same time getting more space. Bishop d2, knight b5. It is not very clear where the knight is going. The d4 is quite strong protected. The plan of black can be to play something like knight b6, with the idea to go to c4, force white to b3, and then use the square c3, or maybe like this. Knight b5, rook f e1, the rook belongs on the open file. The question was, maybe it would be better to put another rook, because this one is not doing much right now. So rook a1 would make equally much sense. Also, sometimes now the bishop can go back if needed. So for example, knight b6, knight c4, I can just go play bishop c1 and still both my rooks are playing. Oops. Knight b5, rook fe1, rook ac8. So slow by slow, black overplayed white and out of a position that was very dangerous for him. He got a clearly better position with space on the queen side, with better pawn structure, because pawn d4 is on the same color as the bishop d2. Rook ac1. So white is trying to exchange pieces to reduce the pressure of black and potentially be able to bring the king. So rook ac1, knight f6. So the plan is clear. The knight goes to e4. And maybe in this situation, moves like rook c4 would be better. First, I'm attacking the pawn, because I'm really threatening to take it, because after rook takes c4, knight takes on f3 with check. And second, white cannot take, so he would be forced to play b3, but then the square c3 would become weak. So, well, knight f6, also possible. So now white a little bit starts getting out, and he actually solves the main problem that he had here, the problem of the bad bishop. He plays bishop f4. This is actually the main drawback of knight f6. It closed the f file and allowed this exchange. Knight e4, bishop takes d6, knight b takes d6, and at this point I believe it would be fair to say that the position is equal. The pawn structure now is not, it's almost symmetric. Black doesn't have any serious advantage in terms of pawn structure. The black knights have squares c4 and e4, white knights have e5 and c5. It's very difficult to force white to play b3 if he doesn't want to, because if the knight is on c4, the knight d3 protects pawn b2, and white doesn't have any problems. h3, h6, knight d5. So now knight c4 doesn't work anymore at all. Rook fe8, knight c6, knight c4, knight f to e5. Black plays king h7. Knight takes b2 doesn't work because of knight e7 check. That's a nice combination. Rook takes e7, rook takes c8. That's why black played king h7. Knight takes e5 makes little sense. One reason I still have this combination, I think, because if I take, then I take on c8 with check, and if king h7, then I take on c8, and should be much better. Basically won. Another possibility for black would be to take on c6 and take on b2, but I don't think he has enough here. It's just 1 pawn, a5, b4, potentially weak. If the rook moves and there is knight e7, I don't think it's a good exchange. Well, so king h7, and now a trick, rook takes e4. Looks like white is winning, but in reality he is absolutely not, because black should have reacted with rook takes c6, and the game probably would end in a quick draw. Knight takes c6, rook takes e4, yeah, probably b3, knight goes away, white can take on a5, but then black will take on d4. So anyway, in general there is really nothing to play here. Instead of this, unbelievably, after rook takes e4, black didn't see rook takes c6, and he took d takes e4. After rook c4, he obviously got in big trouble. Now e3, the position already now is lost. Just two pieces, two knights for a rook, but also the e4 pawn gets lost. The white king is active. King of 1, rook f8 check, knight f3. Obviously, king e2, rook f2 gives black additional opportunities. Knight f3, nothing should happen here. Rook f6, d5. Now the knight is protected forever. Rook d6, rook c5, a4, king e2, a3, b3. The reason white doesn't exchange the pawns is because he knows, like in a couple of moves, he will get the pawn before, and at the same time a2 will be protected, so black doesn't get to the pawn a2. So there is no risk here. Rook g6, g4, so black is just attacking white pieces, but obviously without any success. Rook f6. Well, now white, it would be absolutely safe to take on e5, but black doesn't have anything. But instead, white played rook b5, threatening to take on b4, rook e8, knight c e5, rook d6, king e3. So finally white got the pawn, and also he's going with his king in the center. Rook f6, and rook takes b4. And finally here black resigned. So if he would take on f3, I can take, and almost every move wins. Probably rook d4 is the best one, because the king doesn't come on time, which means black has to go back with his rook, and of course this is completely lost. So interesting game, in my opinion, both in the opening, because it got tactical, so that f5 e6 idea was quite strong, and I believe it completely defeated the opening's idea of black. However, at some point white messed up and allowed black not only to equalize, but even to get a better position. Particularly, he missed the idea of black creating artificial castle by playing rook f8 and king g8. And later on, black was doing better, but he missed bishop f4, after which the game should end in a draw. And then he didn't find a tactical response to white's combination. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this game. This is Leonid Kritz for chesslectures.com, signing out.